So just a quick impromptu live to talk about an post that I put up yesterday that was about an affirmation that sometimes it's okay to say no. And so on how saying no can actually attract more abundance into your life. And I want to illustrate this by talking about and sharing with you some things that have been going on with me. So this week, over the weekend and early into this week, and I know it's only Wednesday, I actually ended up having to pull out of and say no to 2 collaborative opportunities that I had been pursuing, because it turned out that neither of them was actually what I thought they were going to be. They both had red flags in their own ways, and they just weren't in alignment with who I want to be, what I want to do, and how I want to show up in the world. And weren't necessarily in alignment with how I want to spend my time, and things along those lines. So you might be thinking, Trace, what the fuck are you talking about? How does this make you more abundant? And how it makes you more abundant is when you say no to things that breach your boundaries, that are not in alignment with who you are and what you want, that are just not working for you, you're actually showing the universe what you will and won't accept. You're drawing those boundaries and you're saying, this isn't what I want. And then the universe is like, okay, cool, no problem. Let me give you something else. And so by having said no to these 2 opportunities this week, today I've been rewarded by the universe with 2 new amazing collaborative opportunities that I'm really excited about, that are with 2 amazing, beautiful businesswomen who I feel really in alignment with and really in sync with. And I'm really excited to be able to share some of these things in the coming weeks. So just if you are in a situation where you are struggling with being a people pleaser, because let's face it, sometimes it's a real thing. You know, there are lots of us, and especially if you're a multi-potentialite, this is very much something that we struggle with because we are constantly trying to prove our worth, prove how valuable we are, you know, seeking that love and validation and, you know, all of those things, when the truth is that we need to be really strong with our boundaries instead. So instead of compromising our boundaries and saying, you know what, it doesn't matter what I want, let me just do what it is that you want. We actually, this is what I was saying at the very beginning of the live, that when we compromise our boundaries, we tell the universe that we're willing to accept that we're willing to accept something that isn't in integrity or isn't in alignment with us, doesn't feel good, it gives us that little niggling feeling that makes us feel really uncomfortable. And if we do that, that's what we attract. That's where our vibrational energy is at. And so when we turn around and we enforce those boundaries and say, this isn't working for me, I don't want to do this, we put up that boundary and we block out those negative frequencies or those low vibrational frequencies. And we actually then attract what we do want. We vibrate at that higher frequency and say, you know what? I'm open to these amazing things that I do want. And so being a people pleaser is a hard thing to get over. Like I said in my post yesterday, it took me nearly 40 years to work this out and get through it myself. And it's a constant process. I'm getting a lot better at not just recognizing them, but taking the action. And, side note, my focus word for 2021, which I've mentioned before, is illuminate, and illuminating a lot of shadow stuff this year. It was so on point, I can't even believe it. And part of that for me has been where I have not enforced those boundaries because I'm more worried about making other people happy and how I over deliver and how I show up in my business, in my family, with my friends, etc. But when we do that, we teach other people not to respect us because they can, because our boundaries don't mean anything. And I was having a conversation with somebody else about this the other day where we were talking about boundaries, and that, as we start to enforce them, which is really hard in the beginning, it gets easier as we go along. And as we do that, we start to recognize that voice within us speaking louder and flagging it more quickly when things don't feel right, and it becomes easier. When you start saying no, it gets easier to say no. When you start enforcing your boundaries, it is hard in the beginning, but it gets easier. Each and every time you say no to something that is not in alignment for you, whether it is picking up after your kids instead of getting them to do it themselves, whether it is working extra hours in your job because your boss has asked you to pull a second shift and you really just don't want to because you had other plans with friends or family, whether it is meeting a client at a time that really isn't good for you, but you're too afraid to say, that time doesn't work for me, because you are afraid that if you don't do it at that time, that client might walk away. It is being afraid to actually change your mind partway through, having already committed to something and saying, actually, this isn't working for me. This isn't in alignment for me. It's okay to walk away. Nothing is set in stone, and you do not have to compromise your integrity, your beliefs, your values just because you've already said yes before. It's okay to say no. We've been having this conversation about consent for years now. Just because you say yes doesn't mean you can't change your mind partway through. Okay? It's okay to walk away. It's okay to say no, and it's okay to make your own decisions. You have permission to do that. You don't need my permission. You don't need me to tell you it, but I'm telling you anyway. You have permission to say no, and sometimes when you say no, it actually opens up the door for you to receive something better. So, let me know in the comments if you want something amazing that has happened to you after you've said no to an opportunity, what else has come in for you or how this works for you. If you completely disagree, that's fine too. Let me know. Would love to hear all about it. And I will chat to you next time. Lots of love.